Alright, so you've walked out of Materialists feeling some kind of way, opened up your feed, and it is everywhere. Lucy is awful, brainless, and chose the wrong man. In a movie marketed for us to be rooting for her, why does it feel so uncomfortable? Well, maybe Materialists isn't trying to make us love Lucy, but it's daring us to recognize her. Because Lucy isn't a love story, she's a survival story. She's not heartless, she's armored, and that's what makes her so hard to watch. On the surface, Materialists is a sleek representation of dating amongst New York's ultra-wealthy and the deep claws capitalism has in our world. But dig a little deeper and it becomes something more intimate. It's not about choosing between two men or pitting them up against each other, but about how we learn to measure our value and what can happen when you fundamentally don't believe you have any. Lucy is a high-end matchmaker, selling fantasies of love to clients who treat connection like a luxury purchase. She lives a life that looks perfect. Just as she meets Harry, who offers her affection with no obvious catch, her ex John returns, still scrappy, still unfinished, still familiar. And what follows isn't exactly anything new. Girl flirts with dreamy guy in a fantasy life, is faced with her past, and ultimately makes a choice. But it's not a triangle, it's a clear split. Two men who reflect the two halves of Lucy's fractured self. So, who is Lucy really? There's a lot that's telling about Lucy. What she does, what she says, and what she avoids. She grew up in a household scarred by financial instability and emotional turbulence. Her earliest understanding of love was shaped by volatility, resentment, and shame. She learnt young that to survive, she needed to manage not just circumstances, but perception. She tried once to pursue something authentic, acting. There was a time when Lucy wanted to express herself, to be seen and understood, but she didn't believe she had the talent. Or maybe she couldn't handle the exposure. So she traded the stage for something more calculated, matchmaking. A career where she gets to direct love stories, but never has to star in one. And that switch tells you everything. She doesn't just have control, she is control. Her life is curated to the last detail. Not because she's shallow, but because she's scared. Deep intimacy terrifies her. Being challenged? Well, that's the threat. When Sophie, one of Lucy's clients, becomes a victim to a SA, Lucy's reaction reveals more about herself than it does about the horrible situation. She takes on a deep, almost suffocating responsibility for the actions of the man involved, as if her failure to control the narrative orchestrated the assault. This self-blame comes from spending a lifetime trying to manage chaos and avoid messiness. The trauma triggers her need for control, highlighting the painful limits of her emotional armor. We see her as her childhood self, with how deeply she carries the burden of others, yet struggles to face her own. It's hard to ignore that the men, Harry and John, appear more like caricatures than full characters too. But that's not a flaw. That's Lucy's lens. Lucy doesn't really know the men in her life. She doesn't allow herself to. She only engages with the sides of them she feels safe with. Harry is soft, successful, emotionally generous, but Lucy can't connect to his affection. Why not? Because he claims to love her for her intangibles, her presence, her mind, her energy. And to Lucy, that's inconceivable. She doesn't value those parts of herself, so she can't imagine being loved for them. This leads her to dehumanize Harry and continue to keep herself an arm's length away. John, by contrast, makes perfect sense to her. His insecurities are known and even outshadow her own. He doesn't ask her to be better or to open up. He's already seen her worst and stayed. That's manageable. That's familiar. We never see Harry or John fully because Lucy doesn't see them fully. She relates to them as reflections of her internalized self-worth. And in her world, intimacy is unsafe, love is conditional, and value is something you earn by being impressive. Early in the film, Lucy attends a wedding where the bride admits something quietly devastating. She's not sure why she's marrying her fiancé. After a beat, she lands on it. He makes her sister jealous. It's an awful confession, until Lucy steps in. She reframes the bride's doubt into a neat package by saying that he makes her feel valued. It sounds elegant, empowering even. But what does that word, valued, really mean here? Lucy's instinct to spin insecurity into something marketable isn't cruel. It's what she does for a living. And it's what she does in her own life. So why does she choose John? John doesn't ask anything new of Lucy, he hasn't grown, and that's part of the appeal. She doesn't have to either. With John, there's no expectation to show more of herself or to believe she's worthy of anything richer or more complex. He reflects the version of her that she already knows how to live with. Harry could have offered love, but Lucy never allowed herself to know him. She kept him in a fantasy box, then convinced herself it wasn't real. John isn't fantasy, he's memory, and that makes him feel real, even if he mightn't feel right. Lucy's entire life is a performance of worthiness, and the tragedy is that she can't believe she's worthy without the performance. She thinks her value lies in what she can curate, not in who she actually is. So when someone like Harry tries to love her for the unseen, the unpolished parts, she recoils. It doesn't add up. What makes Materialists so realistic is this. Lucy probably doesn't even know that she's doing any of this. And that's what makes the film sting. Because from where we're sitting in the audience, the pattern feels obvious. But when you're inside it, when the logic of self-protection feels like love, it's almost impossible to tell the difference. Lucy doesn't really see the full story of herself. And deep down, maybe we're afraid that we don't either. In case you missed it, everything I share here is my personal take and opinion. The beauty of media is that it can mean different things to everyone, so I'd absolutely love to hear what you think too. Please drop your thoughts and feelings in the comments below, and thank you so much for tuning in.